Hello, I am Dennis Green. Welcome to the Church Development Foundation presentation on how to conduct a feasibility study for your church capital campaign. Now we're going to change our format a little bit and make this more like a TED Talk rather than a college lecture. I still welcome your comments, concerns, and questions. Please click on that chat box. I'll share with you information that we've gathered for more than 200 church capital campaign feasibility studies. You can see this webinar right now. You can see the recording. You can share this webinar just by clicking on the link below. I'll send out this webinar to you. Feel free to share it with others. And if you have topics you'd like me to cover, please click on that email address there and send those ideas on to me. So we will move pretty quickly through this, and we're going to first cover why conduct a feasibility study. I'll share with you several case studies of our successes and failures, which we've had some over the past 200 feasibility studies. I will help you better understand the possible outcomes of a feasibility study, what to expect and what to not expect. We'll cover the process. What does it look like in action? Everyone asks, how much time does it take and what does it cost? We'll cover those in detail, and we'll conclude with what will happen if you don't do a feasibility study. This is all oriented towards you preparing well in advance for your church capital campaign. So we're in March right now, and if you're going to do a capital campaign in the fall, right now is time to plan out that feasibility study. So I have some questions for you that I'd like you to click on that box in the chat box down below. What do you want me to focus on? What's your greatest concern? What resources do you need to help your church be a success for a fall capital campaign? For instance, would you like to see a sample feasibility study report? I've got a bunch of them. I can send them to you electronically. Just got to blank out the names. I can share with you questions. I can show you what it looks like in action and what reports and what kind of impact, and the nuance and specificity that comes to tailor each report to each congregation. Now, we were founded in 1992, and before that, I worked in the secular world for 10 years with museums and schools and art galleries. But then in 92, I shifted and started this organization, and we've raised about $1 billion over that time. We begin with a spiritual perspective, and then we augment that with a whole lot of research based not just on our outcomes, but also we borrow heavily from the academic and the corporate world as well. We're with you for 3 years after the campaign, and we like to start a planned giving effort after the campaign as well. It's based in scripture. This is my favorite scripture, and it's supported by secular academic research on flourishing. It's an extension of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's a great book I just read called Flourishing, and it's about the key to that is understanding your natural God-given gifts and then using those. That's a significant source of joy. I've got a ton of experience, but there's only one thing I want to really talk about. I was a cancer survivor. It's not fun. It really makes me deeply aware of what's important in life. And this subject we're talking about right now, the faith community is what sustains us through those hard times. So I want to help support you in making that a healthy community. I've had lots of failures, lots of successes, written 4 books. I'll give you that book. If you contact me, I'll give you that book for free. It's full of lots of statistics and stories and case studies. We also borrow heavily from Daniel Kahneman's work, and I've been a member of all these different groups that share with me their research. So we're loaded for bear. So why do a feasibility study before a church capital campaign? That's a fair question. Well, from a hardcore pragmatic perspective, the number one outcome is engagement equals generosity, and we can measure that. If you just ask for a gift for your capital needs, you usually raise 50% of annual giving in 3-year pledges. If you have a thorough level of engagement, you will raise a minimum of 250% of annual giving. So no engagement equals 50%, thorough engagement, 250%. That's a multiple of 5. So a 500% increase in giving as a result of engagement. I know that because I have failed and not done engagement, and then I've devoted myself to thorough engagement. How much can we raise? We always begin with the question, can we raise 3 times annual giving? And if we can't hit that, are we going to hit our average outcome of 250% of annual giving? Are people interested in making planned gifts through their estate? The statistics say 3% of your population is ready, willing, and able at any given moment to make an estate gift. The average gift is right now about $100,000. This morning, I came from a meeting where we identified about 1,000 active constituents. So our plan is to garner about 30 planned gifts in the year ahead. That would equate to approximately $3 million. Can we do it? Well, we have done that, and we plan to do that. That's why we want to focus on that in the feasibility study. So number 3, a feasibility study tells you how you need to proceed in your capital campaign, and there is a great deal of nuance and specificity. I've had one garment my whole life that was tailor-made for me, and I loved it, and it fit just wonderfully. I've never had anything like it, haven't had one since, but boy, that tailoring experience just is transformative. It also will help you identify volunteers, because we ask them straight up, would you be willing to volunteer? And we give them 6 different options. Some take a lot of time, some take very little time, and we describe those. We come out of a feasibility study with 50 volunteers ready to roll, and that is exciting. We want to avoid disasters. We give them a format in which they can share their concerns without any repercussions. So it's very objective, and people very much care about that. They're not going to criticize their minister, their pastor to their face. They might complain in a written survey or an interview about some facet of the church that they're concerned about, but that objectivity really helps. That's why a surgeon will not operate on their own child. It's the loss of objectivity. The result is number 6, you get a very specific set of recommendations tailored to your congregation and your unique needs. It's just like an X-ray before surgery, or even better, perhaps an MRI before surgery. And to me, that's just extraordinarily valuable, since I've had 3 surgeries in my life. So can you get any money from foundations? That's another question that we ask. It's a bit rare. Not every church qualifies for that. Foundations say, well, if it's a membership organization, the members could give. However, if you're busy in community service or education like this, if you look at this picture in the bottom right, the modern building, not the blue building, that's an apartment building, but that's HJ's Community Center, founded by the building on the left, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. It is education outreach. There's yoga, there's a coffee bar, there are classrooms. I was there one time for a chess club meeting. So much goes on there. Well, we got 6 foundation grants towards that, as well as donations from the members of the church. So is it possible? Yes, not for everybody, but it's conceivable. Another outcome is we identify potential leadership gifts. I'm sure you're familiar with the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and that's shifted in recent years. It's now 90-10. Since the Dow has been above 30 for more than a year. 10 years ago, it was down at about 10,000. So we have the number of millionaires in our society has increased to 8.8% of the population. They're generous. We've had a load of unrequested $100,000 plus gifts in the past year during COVID, unsolicited. It's fairly remarkable. People tend to love their congregation. They tend to give generously. You'll find out who those people are in the survey, because they self-identify, because we do talk about money. You'll get a report out of this. It's going to be thick. I read every word. Here's one right here. You can see it's page after page. It's tons and tons of detail. You will want to read. So if you're like me, you're kind of a nerd, you're going to read every single sentence in there, every bit of feedback. Every comment is recorded. It is not attributed to the individual who said it. It's just recorded, so it is available for any of us to see, and it is absolute gold. Okay, I just got a question that popped up in the chat. Is the result of a feasibility study ever? No, don't do a capital campaign. The answer is yes, just had one of those recently. just near Minnesota, near the Minnesota border, where we discovered that this congregation kind of were pretty well split on the path of action they should take, with about a 50-50 split, and neither group dominated, and neither group wanted to do what the other group wanted to do. So our recommendation was, don't do a capital campaign, just prayerfully, peacefully move ahead with perhaps assistance from your denominational resources to facilitate the decision-making process about the path of action. So no fundraising can be done. We cannot help you with that. We're fundraisers. So you need to go through a decision-making process that is gentle and peaceful and based in prayer, without anger or rancor, just understanding that there is a difference of opinion that the group needs to work through. Okay. Good question. Keep them coming. Is another one that popped up. How much does it cost? We're going to cover that in just a minute. And how long does it take? Then we're going to cover that in a minute too. Okay, so it is extremely specific to your congregation. There are tailored recommendations. There are a bunch of them, along with a timeline. You'll have names of volunteers per each committee. So we think there ought to be a prayer committee, events, thanks, youth, ambassador that does the human contact and communication, and we become the staff of those committees. So when you do a church capital campaign, there's somebody that's got to do the behind the scene works over the course of about 5 or 6 months, and it might take 1,000 hours of that person's time. But we have a statistic for that. If you hire a pro, you're going to raise a lot more money than if you do it yourself. So it's kind of fun to be in that business. Our lifetime average for the past 30 years is, for every dollar we're paid, we usually raise $25. So it's such a net positive experience. It's a joy to be in this business. Anyway, I deviate, forgive me. We'll also tell you what is a realistic dollar goal, regardless of the need. You need to set a goal that you're pretty sure that you're going to exceed, so the congregation feels like they've experienced a win. They don't want to feel like losers. That's not a good idea. We'll have estate giving prospects, because people will tell us if they are interested. We'll have foundation names if that's a good fit for you. And we'll have page after page of comments, which I said earlier are absolute gold. So do we talk about money? Heck yes, we do. I like Dave Ramsey. I don't like it that he sells storm windows and gold and that kind of stuff, but he has really increased our awareness that decisions about money really ought to be deliberate. And there's a ton of research behind that as well. For instance, the book Give to Live by Gregory Lawson has a scientific study that discovered that people who give more than 2% of their income have a significant increase in the T cell production of their immune system. Isn't that fascinating? So there's science behind generosity. Dave Ramsey has elevated our comfort with discussion of money and the deliberateness of sharing and generosity. Most people think that asking for a donation is more stressful than death. Well, that's unfortunate, true, but they should not. If they proceed the way we recommend, and what our recommendation is, the ask should be based in prayer. And the ask is, would you please pray your way through it? We'd love for you to consider giving 3% of your income each year for the next 3 years, or a one-time gift of 3% of your assets. But what you give is between you and God. So we only ask that you pray your way through that. Now, when we aggregate the responses, we've actually got a number that we can share with you. And our question is, can we raise 300% of annual giving in 3-year pledges? Can we generate some planned gifts, hopefully of the same amount? We also asked that question that's at the bottom there. If we were to conduct a church capital campaign tomorrow, what amount might you consider giving? Now, I know this, I've been through this, a couple hundred of these. Usually whatever amount they offer, they usually give twice as much after they've been thoroughly engaged in the capital campaign. But we do have a number coming out of that. So, and we do know what people are ready to give. If you need to ask for money early, you're going to have a list of people who are just ready to give. But we come out of that with a dollar amount that we're pretty darn sure we can raise, and our forecasts are above 95% accurate over the past 30 years. I am very proud of that. So what else do we talk about? Well, we want to know, is this plan important to you? Just this morning, I spoke with a gentleman whose parish is considering building a parish hall. Now, I know from experience, That is extraordinarily exciting. I spoke with another group this morning that is going to put in a commercial kitchen. People love to give to commercial kitchens as well. Sometimes we have subjects that are not important to people, and they tend to tell us just fairly directly. And I've had that experience, and it's harsh, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but sometimes about 1 out of 20 feasibility studies is the answer is no. People are not interested in doing that plan. So another question we ask is, do you have confidence and a level of trust in the leadership of the church? That's extremely important. Are we meeting your spiritual needs? Are we meeting your social needs? What else can we be doing to better meet your spiritual and social needs? Would you volunteer? And of course, we ask for comments. So it's a heck of a lot of information, but we boil it down to just the most important, succinct, detailed, tailored recommendations for each unique congregation. So who does it? I recommend that you retain an expert, somebody who's been through it 100 times. I remember when I snapped my Achilles tendon playing volleyball, it really hurt. And I immediately, of course, went to the emergency room and then went to surgery shortly after that. And I was relieved to hear that the doctor who was operating on my Achilles tendon did 10 of these per week for the past 15 years. So I was very comfortable that she knew what she was doing. And it worked out well. Sure hurt like heck, but they even had injured their Achilles tendon, so knew what it was like to be a patient as well. So retain an expert. I like this cartoon. The small print says, can you get that down to 140 characters? And I like that because I am guilty of that so badly. And my wife reminds me, brevity is a virtue. So I try, so you'll get this thick report that's got a lot of data, and the value of expertise, according to Malcolm Gladwell in his book, it does take 10,000 hours to become an expert. And once you've got 10 or 20 or 30 years experience, you can pretty well accurately forecast what will happen. Now we compare your data to other similar churches, and that is kind of a statistical basis for our projections. Conducting a feasibility study by an expert is a best practice. You can ask your denominational leaders what they think about it. And the recommendation is always, please do a feasibility study. Please hire an expert. You will raise a heck of a lot more money. So how much does it cost and how long does it take? Normally it's $14,000 plus travel, usually takes 6 weeks. If it is for a much bigger scope, it might be more. I remember we had a church with a $6 million budget that was in the midst of a big transition, and we were very worried about the impact of change. And so we doubled the size of the feasibility study, and I think the final cost was about $21,000, but it was enormous in scope. But anyway, we can tailor this to the unique needs of your church. So what happens if you don't do a feasibility study? And then we'll wrap up. Let me know if you've got any other questions coming down the pike, and I will address that. It is a lot like flying an airplane through the mountains in a storm. Having radar was a lovely resource to save your life. When I had my 3 surgeries, they did a lot of x-rays and CAT scans before anything began, so they know what to look for. We will discover if there is support for the plans. We'll discover any obstacles and concerns. We'll discover what is a realistic goal. If you don't do this, the chances of failure are just unacceptably high, in my opinion. I want to be a success. I'm a delicate flower. I don't want to crash and burn one more time. And this is a very inexpensive. If you're going to raise $1 million, $14,000 to ensure success is really quite a good idea. So I want to avoid failure. That's very important to me. So what are your next action steps? The first thing, as you're thinking about your capital campaign in the future, and if you're going to do one in the fall, you need to do your feasibility study now, just to get your ducks in a row. So organize a team. It can be just 2 or 3 people. That's fine. Or you can use an existing team, finance or parish council or outreach. You just need kind of a little bit of a think tank to really basically just go to 2 meetings to help identify your facility financial needs. You're going to have to hire an expert. We always have 2 different contracts, one for the feasibility study and a different one if you hire us to do the church capital campaign. If the answer comes out no, you're done. If we're not a good fit, you're done. You can hire somebody else. That's okay too. But I do recommend that you hire someone who has run 10 years worth of church capital campaigns. Expertise does have some value. You need to identify people in your congregation to interview, and then boom, you launch the study. You want to talk to mavens, people who are connected, people who have been active in the church. So you can get your finger on the pulse. What do they think? How do they feel? Will this be a success? You're going to mail out, you're going to hand out the survey. You want input from everyone possible. And then you pull together all of that data. And from that, your expert will create the report. So it is a lot of work. It's a lot like an academic research study. And it's totally worth the investment. So I got another one popped up there. As an honest question, do you charge to help us? Of course, I have to charge if I'm going to do a $14,000 study, but I never charge for a 1-hour talk or 2 hours or a couple hours here and there just to help you get organized. It's my pleasure to do so. And just that conversation can help you avoid disasters in the future. I myself, I need to give away 10% of my time and my money. I know that I'm a happier person. I know that's the right thing to do. So I look for ways to volunteer. If I can help you, give me a call. This is my phone number. That's my email address. Now, you'll also have this when I email this out to you. You'll have this information. So please don't hesitate to call or email. It would be my absolute pleasure to help you out. Join us next month, April 13th, Thinking Ahead, Planning Now for a Church Capital Campaign. Hey, thank you all very much for joining us. My name is Dennis Green with Church Development. And if I can help, give me a call. So go forth, good luck, and God bless. Bye-bye.